We also had to mention that outside of the top 10, one of the debuts is in very limited release in only 35 theaters is Stephen Chow's The Mermaid. It made $1 million over the weekend in only 35 theaters with a per screen average of 29,000, by far the highest on the chart. The film has already grossed 420 million in China, which is an all-time record high, and in only 2 weeks of release. It's going to be crazy to see how high this goes. It's like the Star Wars of China right now.
Right. But I hear it probably won't make any blip. Sure, it pulled in 1 million, but that's like chump change compared to others. The interesting thing about The Mermaid is that it's released by Sony. And remember in the previous podcast, I said that, hey, if China received more publicity, could it do better? Sony, they're indie arm, Sony Picture Classics. This one's probably, released by that studio.
Yeah.
Probably had a little bit more advertising budget.
No, they didn't advertise this movie at all. That's one of the complaints from I think IndieWire and some other people in the media. They're like, hey, this movie is breaking records in China. A major studio has the rights to it, and they didn't market the film at all. And despite that, it did $1 million in only 35 theaters with a per screen average of 29,000, which is by far the highest on the charts.
Oh, and I mean, it could be Stephen Chow fans checking it out, and they're counting on those people to tell their friends about it.
And no, it might be it might be one of these things where they what's the previous one, the previous record holder,
Monster Hunt.
Yeah, they might think that it's like Monster Hunt, one of these movies that appeals to the Chinese audience but have no appeal outside of that. But The Mermaid definitely show that it has a wider audience than that with 29,000 per screen average. That's really good. It continues this trend of U.S. distributors of Chinese films releasing their films within weeks of their original release dates in China. These films are actually grossing in the millions rather than like tens of thousands. Even The Monkey King 2 did over 500,000, whereas the first one, I think, only ended up doing like a sixth of that or less.
Yeah, you just wonder if they're just kind of like throwing these movies out on theaters just because. And I think the real moneymaker is on home video or VOD.
That's part of it. The other part is they just don't have much confidence in it, and then these distributors can't get enough distribution, and they don't have the budget to get that kind of distribution. They don't have the marketing budget, and they probably couldn't convince mainstream theaters to carry it. But I think The Mermaid shows with 20,000 per screen average. That's like jam-packed theaters. So it shows that, hey, maybe this thing has more appeal than they expected, because it's doing so well in just 35 theaters. They might expand the film to more screens in the coming weeks.
Yeah, which they will, I think. Like say 29K per screen is very good.
Yeah, it's very good. And it's not like when you see these kind of per screen averages in the 29,000, they tend to be released in a couple screens. So everyone who wants to see it goes to those couple screens. But this is 35 theaters at 29,000. That's really good. And according to Box Office Mojo, this 1 million debut is the highest ever for a Chinese language film, excluding Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was about to point that out, but okay.
Yeah. I think the previous high was Ip Man 3.
Well, like I said, Crouching Tiger had an advertising push behind it. This one didn't.
Yeah, this one had no advertising.
Right, you can see the disparity between number 1 and number 2. Yeah. Huge drop off.
Yeah, well, Crouching Tiger had the reviews, the film festivals that built it up, and then they slowly expanded it. It got nominated, and they won a bunch of awards. It slowly went wide. Whereas The Mermaid was just kind of, they're like, hey, just dump this in all these markets that have lots of Asians.
Well, when we said that comedy sometimes had this cultural barrier, there's that with The Mermaid too, right?
Yeah. They're afraid that the Stephen Chow humor might not translate.
Right.
But at 29,000, that's eye-opening. They might have a better thing than they expected. And the other thing with Monster Hunt doing so poorly was Monster Hunt, they released the film like half a year after it debuted in China. That interest level is not there anymore. That excitement level is not there anymore. and people who probably wanted to see Monster Hunt and what all the talk was about probably already own the Blu-ray. That's one of the problems with Monster Hunt. But the Mermaid, they released it just a couple of weeks after its debut in China, and it's doing really well in limited screens.
All right, then we'll see what Sony will do.